Hello there, folks. You may well have seen the New Conservatives' quite ridiculous plan to tackle migration. The good news is it was conceived by a bunch of knuckleheads who command about as much credibility as Nigel Farage at a journalism awards show. On your screen is the author of the plan, Tom Hunt. Be very careful how you say that name, as per Jeremy. He is the Conservative Member of Parliament for Ipswich. And what he is going to prove here is he happens to be as vile, unpleasant and cowardly as the fellow members of his ragtag and bobtail group. Vanessa Feltz is going to put to him the perfectly reasonable question of why there is absolutely no mention of dealing with the asylum claims backlog in his sad plan. And that's especially pertinent considering the Rwanda plan seems to have gone up in flames. And Tom here is going to get all pissy at that question, for some unknown reason, and then, like the little boy he is, run away, after immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bhangal offers his very first contribution to the discussion after Hunt was allowed to endlessly pontificate over the plan I wouldn't even use as toilet paper in an emergency. So let's have a look, shall we?
I'm going to bring Harjap in just one moment, but one more question for you, Tom, before I do so, and this is it. We know about this unbelievable logjam, don't we? We know about the people who are here and are just waiting and waiting to be processed. And we know that they're not legally allowed to work while they're here. So they're a financial drain on us. They are stagnating as far as they're concerned. They're in this horrible kind of uncomfortable limbo, waiting and waiting, because for some reason or other, despite the fact that you say that there are many people already in this country who aren't gainfully employed and they jolly well ought to be, nobody seems to want to train them up to help to process all these people waiting and waiting and waiting. I'm quite surprised that you haven't drawn the Prime Minister's attention to that logjam and to getting things moving so that people aren't costing the taxpayer daily a fortune as they wait to be processed.
I don't think, and I think it's important to be recognised that the images we're seeing at the moment on the screen are images of pretty much all men, single men. And it's important to realise they've all come from France. They come from another safe European country.
I feel as if you're answering a question I haven't asked. I haven't asked you anything about France or small boats. I'm asking you about the build-up of people who are already here and are just waiting and waiting to be processed. And it's taking years to do something relatively simple and elementary. A, why? And B, why haven't you focused on getting that to be hurried up?
No, you are talking about illegal migration. You're talking about people who've come here illegally and are waiting for their claims to be processed. You've introduced this topic. You're talking about people's asylum claims being processed.
I'm talking about the fact that there's so many building and building up, and there doesn't seem to be the will or the means to process them quickly. That's what I'm talking about.
So you've moved from legal migration now to talking about illegal migration.
I'm wondering why you haven't focused on that. Because it's very expensive. People don't like paying for it. The people who are waiting don't like waiting. Nobody likes it. And it would seem as if it shouldn't confound this government to find a way of processing more efficiently and more quickly.
The solution to tackling illegal migration is not to give the green light to everyone who's come here illegally.
Didn't say give the green light. I just said process quickly.
If you come here illegally, under no circumstances should you stay. The illegal migration bill the Prime Minister's brought forward has made that absolutely clear. I think if people have come here illegally and you give them a legal right to work, all it would do would be a further pull factor. It would be absolutely the wrong thing to do.
All right, let's bring Harjap into this because this is his daily bread. This is what he does day in, day out. Harjap, what do you make of this pressure group now being brought to bear on the Prime Minister, saying, whatever he's doing to try to stop migration quite patently isn't working, so it needs to be stepped up in all these different ways?
Well, it's clearly obvious that the public aren't happy with this current government's record on immigration. It's very telling that the fact that this backlog's built up and the fact that migration numbers are high is partly due to the fact that we're not removing the people that we need to remove. In 2010 and 2009, this country was removing 60,000 people a year. 60,000 people a year. Now, 50,000 people crossing or coming into your country is not a problem if you're sending 60,000 back. And we say this a lot of the time. Last year, enforced removals fell to under 3,000. And this year, I don't even think they've hit 1,000 yet. So this has all happened under the current government. Why have removals stopped? If for 10 years we were removing at a rate of 60,000 a year, we could have removed 60,000 people who didn't have to be here. The other thing is that because of the backlog, and it's taking 2 years to decide claims, if your claim hasn't been decided after a year, you can automatically apply for a right to work. So that's not acting as much as a deterrent anyway, if you're not going to decide claims quickly. Some of the suggestions are really good about the student dependence. I know for when I went to university, I didn't take my wife along with me. And I'm sure a lot of the people watching the program don't take their partners along to when they go to university. However, some of the suggestions, raising the salary to 38,000, and I had one MP, Tory MP today, and he's openly tweeted about it, saying that visas should be stopped for the care sector. Now, the care sector already has nearly 200,000 vacancies, and it's on its knees, and it is surviving through foreign workers, as is the NHS. So we can't make it harder for that. We've failed, despite the promises that we were given, despite the assurances that this country was given, that don't worry, we'll get our people back into employment, we'll create British jobs for British people. And, we've failed to fill those vacancies with British people 6, 7 years down the line after these promises were made. So I think this government seriously has to look at its record and what it says and what it does. No MP, no Home Office minister, not even a Prime Minister has failed to explain why that number has come down from 60,000 to 3,000. That is where the crux lies.
Yeah,
there is deterrent.
Tom? Sorry, Tom, do you want to respond? Oh, has Tom disappeared? Okay. Harjap, thank you very much. Always a great pleasure having you on the programme. Although it feels as though we make no progress, and nobody ever does seem to in this conversation.
We're talking about the same thing in the next couple of weeks.
Every single time. And I believe Tom hung up the phone. I'm not sure why. I thought we were very courteous. Very interested indeed to hear what his plan was. And maybe he wasn't quite so courteous to us because I had another question for him. Anyway, I'll tell you what's coming up after the break.
Is it just me, or did it sound like he took a phone call and decided to bin off Talk TV because he was concerned he would have to answer to the perfectly valid points being raised by the immigration lawyer? Still, I do have something to show you. Something very important. When it comes to jobs such as fruit picking, it turns out Tom here is very much the voice of experience.
And certainly, I myself have been a fruit picker. I worked in a fruit process in a agricultural processing factory for 4 months myself, and I was in the Radish department, and I did that for 4 months. So I have actually worked in one of those factories. And
you just said you were a fruit picker that worked in an agricultural factory in the Radish department. Fruit picking in a factory in a radish department. Make that make sense, please. People, I beg of you, make that make sense. So, I will probably cover the entire plan this moron has written in a separate video. It's mind-boggling. It's as if his brain is a radish. He comes up with 12 ideas of how to reduce migration without giving a single consideration to the damage it would do to not only the economy of the United Kingdom, but just the country in general. It's the most hare-brained thing I've ever read. And that's saying something. It's insanity. So I will cover that in a separate video. I don't know when that's going to come because I'm going to have to do some heavy drinking before I do the video, I think. Yeah, it's just really annoying to read. Anyway, cheers for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again soon.